If you bought one of these 8 general aviation aircraft in the last few years, you probably lost a serious amount of money. And I'm not talking about the normal depreciation every pilot expects. This is different. This is value disappearing faster than fuel burn on a hot day. Here's what really happened. According to AOPA Finance, the pandemic triggered a surge in demand for owner-flown aircraft that manufacturers and repair facilities simply couldn't meet. And with supply choked off and buyers flooding in, prices spiked to levels that had no business existing in a rational market. Some manufacturers rushed unproven technology to market before it was ready. Others made promises they couldn't keep. And buyers, many of them first-time aircraft owners chasing the pandemic flying boom, paid prices that were completely disconnected from reality. Now the market has corrected, and these 8 airplanes are the clearest proof of that. This one stings because it was supposed to be the future. The Pipistrel Velis Electro was the world's first type-certified electric aircraft, receiving its EASA certification in June 2020. Pilots were excited, flight schools were excited, the aviation press couldn't stop talking about it, and then reality showed up. According to Gamma's 2024 shipment data, Pipistrel's overall deliveries dropped from 71 aircraft through the first 3 quarters of 2023 to just 59 over the same period in 2024, a market heading in one direction. The problem is everything you'd expect if you thought about it for 5 minutes. Electric infrastructure at general aviation airports is almost non-existent. The range is brutally limited. Around 50 minutes of flight time with reserves per Pipistrel's own specifications, and the battery degradation question haunts every used aircraft transaction. What does a replacement battery cost? Nobody has a clean answer. How many cycles does it have left? Nobody can tell you with confidence. Early adopters who paid a premium to be first now own an aircraft with almost no resale market, no clear parts support path, and a technology that the broader GA community simply wasn't ready for. The hype has evaporated, and the asking prices on the used market are reflecting that every single month. Eclipse Aviation went bankrupt in 2008. A new owner restarted it, then shut it down again. That's the whole story, really, except you're the one still paying for it. Originally launched to democratize jet aviation, a light jet for the owner-pilot who couldn't afford a citation, it attracted massive investment, thousands of deposits, and genuine excitement. The aircraft itself flies fine. The problem is what surrounds it. Qualified technicians are scarce. Getting the right parts requires patience and persistence most owners didn't sign up for. And as the fleet ages, pushing 15 to 20 years old now, those friction points only multiply. Meanwhile, the light jet market has moved forward dramatically. Buyers shopping in that price range today have options with modern avionics, manufacturer backing, and clear upgrade paths. The Eclipse is a fascinating piece of aviation history. It's just a very difficult piece of aviation history to own profitably. Wait, before you click away, hear me out. The Cessna 172 itself is fine. It's one of the greatest aircraft ever built. This isn't about the airplane, this is about timing. According to AOPA Aviation Finance, the pandemic created a demand surge for owner-flown aircraft that manufacturers and repair facilities simply couldn't keep up with. Supply choked off, buyers flooded in, and prices spiked to levels disconnected from any rational market. The 172 was the most visible victim simply because so many of them exist. Pilots who had been watching the market for years suddenly saw airplanes they knew were worth $60,000 trading for $95,000, and some of them bought anyway because inventory was tight and nobody wanted to wait. Now the bubble has corrected, flight training demand has normalized, inventory is back, and buyers today are simply not paying 2021 prices. The airplane hasn't changed. The story around it has. If you bought at the peak and need to sell today, you're not selling a Cessna 172. You're selling a bad decision made at the worst possible moment in the market cycle. Here's a number for you, 1987. That's the year Piper asked its own customers to voluntarily ground the Malibu, while engineers tried to figure out why the Continental TSI 520 package kept destroying itself, a fact documented in FAA service difficulty records from that period. Piston pins failing, crankshaft bearings letting go. One owner reported over $46,000 in maintenance costs in the first 2 years alone, and that was at old labor rates. The aircraft itself was genuinely revolutionary. Pressurized cabin, flight-level capable single-piston engine, it looked like a corporate jet and flew almost like one. The engineering from the firewall back is brilliant. But that 1987 voluntary grounding burned the Malibu's reputation in a way that decades of good logbooks still haven't fixed. Even owners who've addressed every known issue, upgraded the power plant, and have pristine records still walk into a negotiation where the first thing every buyer says is, "Yeah, but it's a Malibu." That reputation is baked into the price, whether you deserve it or not. Brilliance behind the firewall doesn't pay your annual inspection bill. The moment Cirrus announced the G7 on January 11, 2024, thousands of G6 owners instantly lost negotiating power. They just didn't know it yet. According to Cirrus's own announcement, covered by Plane and Pilot and Flight Global, the G7 brought a completely redesigned interior, a new Perspective Touch Plus flight deck with 35% larger displays, dual Garmin touch controllers, stick shaker stall warning, and more. Cirrus's own executive director of the SR product line called it the most significant generational change in the 24-year history of the product line. The G6 was an excellent airplane, Perspective plus avionics, FICI, caps, beautiful interior, but during the overheated market of 2021 and 2022, G6 prices went completely disconnected from reality. Now the gap between a pre-owned G7 Turbo and a G6 Turbo sits around $250,000, wider than the price difference Cirrus originally charged between them. That math destroys G6 owners who bought at peak. Their airplane has been generationally leapfrogged, the pandemic premium has unwound, and the used market is flooded with G6s from owners who already upgraded. It's not a collapse, it's a slow bleed, which for some owners is actually worse because you don't see it coming until you get the first lowball offer on a plane you thought was worth significantly more. In 2017, Cirrus delivered 355 piston singles. Cessna delivered 23 TTx aircraft. Per Gamma shipment data cited by Midwest Flyer magazine, that wasn't a competition. That was an execution. AVWeb and Flying magazine confirmed Textron pulled the plug quietly in early 2018. And here's what makes it a tragedy rather than just a business story. The TTx was arguably the best fixed-gear, single-engine piston aircraft ever built. Composite construction, stunning cruise performance, a cockpit that held its own against anything in the class. It didn't fail because it was bad. It failed because the market had already decided the SR-22 was the answer, and no amount of performance data was going to change that. Now the owners of those 23 aircraft per year are left holding a discontinued low-production composite airplane in a market that rewards volume and continuity. Factories sold new examples for between $466,000 and over $800,000. Used asking prices today average around $315,000. And dropping. The TTx was excellent and the market simply didn't care. For the owners who believed in it, that indifference has been extraordinarily expensive. 209 aircraft, $170 million in debt. You do that math. On April 4, 2024, Icon filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the District of Delaware. Court filings, confirmed by Flight Global and Icon's own press release, showed more than $105 million in convertible notes, another $65 million in unsecured obligations, and $3,300,000 in unpaid invoices. Against a total production run of 209 aircraft across the company's entire existence, that's more than $800,000 in debt for every single airplane ever delivered. The concept was genuinely seductive. An amphibious sport aircraft aimed at people who owned boats and motorcycles and wanted something more. The original price target was around $139,000. By 2023, individual aircraft were billing out at nearly $382,000, and the fantasy collapsed in real time. Every A5 owner watched their resale market transform overnight, not because the airplane got worse, but because the story around it changed completely. A fun, beautiful, exotic amphibian from a visionary startup is one thing. The exact same airplane from a bankrupt company with an uncertain future is something else entirely. The A5 exposed what happens when a brand is built almost entirely on lifestyle marketing without the financial foundation to sustain it. This one lands differently than every other entry on this list, because everything else here involves a bad product, a bad company, or a bad decision by buyers. The Vans RV story is about a genuinely great product, a genuinely great company, and a community of genuinely dedicated builders, and watching it all nearly collapse anyway. Over 11,000 RVs flying worldwide. Decades of trust built one kit at a time. A founder, Dick Van Grunsven, personally respected across the entire experimental aviation world. And then 3 crises hit simultaneously. Quick build kits from an overseas assembler came back with corrosion from defective primer, laser cut parts, manufactured to meet a 250% surge in COVID-era orders, developed stress fractures during assembly. Over 1,800 customers received structurally compromised components. According to AOPA, On December 4, 2023, Van's Aircraft filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, the first time in 51 years the company had ever needed to. Kit prices rose 32% immediately. Builders mid-project faced no certainty about future deliveries. Completed aircraft owners watched the resale market react to a word nobody wanted to say out loud. The RV community is fighting back. The ecosystem is large enough and the airplane good enough that this story isn't over. But the damage done to thousands of builders who poured their savings, their weekends, and years of their lives into these projects is real. And it didn't come from a bad airplane or a dishonest company. It came from a perfect storm that even the most trusted name in kit aviation couldn't outfly. 8 aircraft. 8 completely different failure modes. And that's actually the point. There's no single way to lose money in general aviation. Sometimes it's a manufacturer that rushed technology to market before anyone was ready for it. Sometimes it's a startup that mistook marketing momentum for a sustainable business. Sometimes it's a legendary company that got hit by 3 crises at once and couldn't absorb all of them. And sometimes it's just a pilot who bought a perfectly good airplane at exactly the wrong moment in a market gone irrational. The lesson isn't that these airplanes are bad. Most of them aren't. The lesson is that value in aviation is fragile, context-dependent, and sometimes completely disconnected from the quality of the machine itself. Before you buy, understand the full picture: the manufacturer's financial health, the size and age of the fleet, the parts ecosystem, and where that model sits in its production life cycle. The pilots who did that homework bought smart. The ones who skipped it are the reason this list exists. Drop a comment below. Which one surprised you most? Subscribe if you want us to keep tracking the numbers. See you in the next one.